thank you, Miguel, and thank you, Ken, and thank you too to the whole staff at the Chamber of Commerce for organizing this event and for extending an invitation to us. Let me share my screen so we can pull up the presentation. It's only 3 slides, so don't get too excited. I think it is up now. Okay. I guess I will kick it off with a good afternoon. Buenas tardes. My name is Javier Balmaceda, and I work as a senior policy analyst on Puerto Rico at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. For those of you that are not familiar with the center, we are a nonpartisan research and policy institute based in Washington, D.C. We've been around since 1981, so we're just 1 year shy of our 40th anniversary. And I would summarize our mission by saying that we pursue federal and state policies that reduce poverty and inequality in the United States. Now, the way we go about it differs slightly from the way that other advocacy organizations in this field tend to do it, in that the center really delves into federal and state budgets to ensure that the programs that comprise the country's safety net are both adequately funded and properly structured. As you know, budget negotiations can be a bit boring, and I would know from personal experience because my own parents used to turn on C-SPAN for me when I was little to make me fall asleep. I guess little did they know that years later it would come back to haunt them, in that now it's those same budgetary discussions that now keep me awake at night. But personal stories aside, what I do want to emphasize is that taking the time to look at budgets matter, because more often than not, it's in those boring humdrum negotiations, if you will, that the size and structure of the safety net is ultimately determined. And so the center is constantly monitoring the budgeting process and producing rigorous analysis when needed to raise awareness about changes that would impact the inclusiveness and the expansiveness of the safety net, which of course is so critical to lifting millions of people out of poverty and giving them a fighting chance. In the case of Puerto Rico, our story is even more complex, I would say, and perhaps even perplexing. And that's because, as Ken and Neil alluded to before, the poverty rates in Puerto Rico have historically been much higher than the rest of the country, yet our access to the safety net has been much lower, and that's what you can see in that first slide. So in other words, one would think that a place in the US with a poverty rate that is currently at 43%, which is by far the highest when compared to any other state, is precisely a place where the safety net would be most present. And that is simply not the case. In fact, what we have here is what I would describe as a broken safety net. And so there is much work to be done in terms of understanding why we have a federal budget that doesn't properly fund these programs in Puerto Rico, and also how the absence or the limited availability of many key anti-poverty programs impacts the Commonwealth. Now, before addressing the economic impact, which is the topic of my presentation, I wanted to just very briefly talk about the first question, which is, again, why the federal budget has such gaping holes when it comes to Puerto Rico. And the reason I want to bring this up is that there is, even from a conceptual point of view, a violent, though sometimes less obvious history of discrimination that has led to the systematic exclusion of Puerto Rico and other US territories for that matter from the country's safety net. Now, of course, the history of how these things came to pass could very well be the topic of many other conferences, but I think that I would come off as a little tone deaf if I failed to mention that Puerto Rico, like many other groups in the country, has fought hard and will have to continue fighting hard against all manner of racial biases that really have little or anything to do with budget or economic considerations, but that ultimately prevent the Commonwealth from having full access to the safety net that we're discussing here today. As to the quantitative impact, it's really hard to provide that magic number that sums up exactly how many additional benefits would flow to the Puerto Rico if we were granted full parity. As you can see in that second slide, Puerto Rico has limited access to many critical anti-poverty programs like SNAP or food stamps, Medicaid, and the child tax credit. For instance, when it comes to SNAP, which is nutrition assistance, Puerto Rico has a separate but related program that we know as PAN, and that is funded with a block grant. And this is a lot what Neil was talking about at the beginning. And a block grant is essentially a fixed amount of funding that cannot expand or contract to meet need. And the block grant that the federal government provides every year for PAN is not enough to provide for the program's 1.5 million beneficiaries with the same level of benefits that are given everywhere else in the country. And again, the key difference here is that our PAN is funded with a block grant, whereas SNAP is an entitlement program. And that means that funding is open-ended. An entitlement program is essentially funded through a faucet that allows money to flow into the program. It's open-ended, and it can contract in times of prosperity, or it can expand in times of great need. And the same dynamic goes for Puerto Rico Medicaid, which is also funded with a block grant that doesn't allow for a robust program to exist here. Medicaid in Puerto Rico, as many of you know, is only able to cover 10 out of 17 mandatory services due to lack of funding. Again, that's only 10 of 17 mandatory services. That includes critical treatment like Hep C and long-term care that we can simply not provide here because the block grant that is used to fund Medicaid here isn't enough. And then we also have the child tax credit, which we have access to, but is also very limited in that only families with 3 or more children can apply for the credit, whereas everywhere else in the country, the credit can be claimed starting at 1 child. There are other poverty programs to which Puerto Rico simply has no access at all. And here we have the Supplemental Security Income, SSI, which is meant to help low-income seniors and people with disabilities. And what we have in Puerto Rico instead, and Ken and Neil also talked about this, is another block grant called the Assistance for the Aged, Blind, and Disabled. It's far more limited than SSI. And last but not least, Puerto Rico has no access whatsoever to the Earned Income Tax Credit, which is a program that has been around since 1975, and it's been so successful in curbing down poverty and incentivizing labor force participation that nearly every administration since 1975, both Democrats and Republicans, have expanded the program. In Puerto Rico, unfortunately, we don't get a single dime for EITC, even when this program was designed to offset Medicaid and Social Security payroll taxes, which are paid in full here. And let me repeat that again. The EITC is a program that was designed to offset Medicaid and Social Security payroll taxes, which again are paid in full in Puerto Rico, and yet we don't get a single dime from this program. Now, going back to the magic number, again, it's just very difficult to pin down a precise figure. But what I can tell you is that if we were granted parity, we're talking about billions and billions of dollars that would flow into Puerto Rico, not as a blank check, but through time-tested programs that are specifically designed to treating and alleviating poverty in the country. And then there is also the compounded effect of having an integral safety net, which means that when you have a full safety net that is caring for every aspect of your need, whether that is healthcare or nutrition, disability, or all of the above, the beneficial effects really do grow exponentially. I can also tell you, and this is the subject of the third and final slide, but make it as simple as possible, is that there is a raft of research, including our own, showing that economic security programs cut the poverty rate in the US by nearly half. And that's again what you can see in the slide. So for instance, in 2018, the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit alone lifted 10.6 million people out of poverty. So when we talk about expanding the safety net in Puerto Rico, it's really not just about dollars and cents. but also about how many people we're helping lift out of poverty. And again, at a 43% poverty rate and an even higher rate of 57% of children, we're really looking at millions of American citizens that could really use the help. I want to end by taking a quick step back and stating something that is likely very obvious to everyone here, but that I think is worth repeating. And that is that Puerto Rico has been through a lot lately, to say the least. There's an ongoing recession that officially started in 2006, but that many economists actually trace back to the 70s. There have been 2 devastating hurricanes, a historic bankruptcy, civil unrest, the ousting of a governor, earthquakes, massive levels of outmigration, and now a global pandemic. And so an equitable safety net is not the silver bullet to recovering from all of these events, but it is certainly a good start. If economists were doctors, I always say they would very much deem Puerto Rico a critical patient. And I would say that the safety net, while not the treatment that will carry the whole recovery forward, is certainly a tool that could help stabilize a number of economic ills in Puerto Rico. And so I think it's something that is very much worth fighting for. Again, thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm very eager to hear what the other panelists have to say.